Namaste and welcome to day 25th of 30 days of Appright. For the last two episodes, we have been learning about Appright cloud functions, and also we wrote a simple cloud function that is triggered whenever new account is created, which will send us a Discord notification regarding new user sign up. In this session, we'll add a useful functionality for our application. So we will create a function that will run in a particular schedule and check whether or not the users in our application have drank water in that day, and will notify the user via email reminding them to drink water if they have not performed any entries in the app. So let us get started. For this, I have already created new Dart project like I did in the last episode. I have renamed it to main.dart. Now let us add our dependencies. So we'll need few dependencies here. Let us add mailer. We'll need a Dart Appright server side Dart SDK. So these are the two dependencies. I can run pub-get, and then let us go to main.dart. Like in the previous episode, we need environment variables. So let us import dart.io and then import Dart Appright, and finally import mailer. And also we will be using SendGrid SMTP to send emails. So let us import SendGrid from mailer SMTP server SendGrid. If you remember, we set up SendGrid in episode 11 of 30 days of Appright as a SMTP provider in Appright server. We'll use the same SMTP server from SendGrid in order to send the email via this cloud functions. So you need to go back to your SendGrid application and get a username and key for this episode. Let us get started. First, we need few environment variables, so let's get those. Platform.environment, username env SendGrid username or empty, same, password, SendGrid password or empty, we need project ID because we need to initialize our Dart Appright SDK and get the list of users, get the list of water intake data for those users, etc. So let's create project ID. If you remember this from last episode, this is the default environment variable that we get inside every function execution, and this gives us the current project's ID. Endpoint, we might need to set our own environment variable. Endpoint. Key, will need a API key for Appright. Let's name it Appright key. Just make these empty string if they are not available, so that we'll not have a null error. Finally, we'll also need a collection ID for water intake collections. These are custom environment variables that we will set ourselves in the settings, like we did for webhook URL in the last episode. Now let us initialize our project. Set endpoint, endpoint. Nice. Set project, project ID, set key, key. We have our client object, user service, users client. Now what we need, first we need a list of users, users dot list. This will give us a list of users. Then this is the response we'll get. Let's make this a sync, and when we get a response, we get a user list object from which we can get the list of users by using res data users. So this will be our list of users. For user in user list, so for each user, email. So we'll get the email of the user. And as with Appright 0.8, we know that we have anonymous users which may not have email, so we could just skip them. If email is not equal to null and not is not empty, then here I need to check water intake entries. So first we get the list of users, and for each user we check whether or not email exists, and if email exists we will try to get the users intake data and check if he or she has any entries, and then if he or she doesn't have any entries we will send the email. So let us make a function that will check whether or not he or she has entries. Let's name this function has index. So this will return a boolean index. So what we'll need is client, and then we'll need collection ID. Also we'll need the user ID, and finally we can make this a sync. Let's initialize database service with the client. We could copy this function from our actual project. So in our project, if we look at the API service, we have a function to get data, get index for a particular date. So I could just copy this and paste it here, and this date should be var date time now, and this collection ID will be collection ID, and here will not be returning this. Here we'll be checking if data sum is greater than 0. So we'll just return if this is greater than 0. So if greater than 0, has index is true, otherwise it's false. And in case of any error, we don't catch it, so that our function will just terminate and we'll get to see the error in the function's log. So here we'll check if they have entries. If not, await has index, client is client, collection ID, user ID will be user $ID. So we'll check this. If not has index, then we will send email. So we need to send email to that user. Let us create a function to send email. So for this we need username for send grid, password for send grid, email that should receive the email for the user's email. Now we'll create a SMTP server. And as we are using send grid, we can use send grid and pass our username and password. Finally, we can create a message and send. So here we can create equals message from will be address so this will be from recipients. I can add the email. I can add BCC and CC, but we don't want that. We just want to send email to one user. Subject reminder to drink water. Text, we could say, hey, how are you doing? This is just a reminder to drink water. Stay hydrated. Stay healthy. So this will be our actual message text. Now we can send the email. Final. Now we can send the email. Send. That will accept message and the SMTP server. Using this, we can send the email. We could just return this. So from here now, finally we can call our send email function. Send email, username, password, and email is the email. We could await this and finally print here email sent. So what we did, we got bunch of environment variables. Some of them are automatically set by AppWrite. Some of them we will have to set in the function setting. Then we initialized our client using Dart SDK, Dart's AppWrite SDK. Then we are getting the list of all the users and going through the loop in the user list, checking the email of each user. If email is not empty, then for each user we are checking whether or not they have entries for that particular day, and if they do not have intake for that particular day, then we are using this send email function to send email to that user as a reminder to drink a water. And here we are using our send grid API to send the email. Now let us create a tar.gz file, tar file. Before that, we need to set pop catch and run .pop get, and then I can create tar, and I could rename this to send email, and my tar file is created. Now we can go to our Apprite console. Again, I'm at my project. I have already one function here, Discord notification. So we'll add another function here. We will call this email notification. Select dart. So it's not listed here. As I said before, this is because of cache. I could just reload, and then I see dart here. Email notification, create. And once I'm in here, I'll deploy the tag again manually. Desktop, send email, dot main dot deployed, activate. And in the settings, we need environment variables. So we will create those environment variables. What are those? First, we need endpoint. Endpoint, I can give it my endpoint. Next, what do I need? Apprite key. Let's generate a key from API keys and use it here. So I already have a function key here. I could just copy this, and then if you see, I have proper permission here. So functions key will require users.read and documents.read properties scope only. So I have added those two as the scope. I could now go back here and paste the API key here. And then we'll need SendGrid username. SendGrid username is API key, and SendGrid password. SendGrid password, let me just copy paste it here. You can get it from SendGrid dashboard. We saw that in episode 11. So let me paste it here. This is my SendGrid password. Do we need anything else? Yeah, we also need collection ID. Collection ID, we can get it from our database. Entries, settings, collection ID. Let's copy it and paste it here. We now have all the environment variables. Let's tap update, and let's test it by just tapping execute here. So execute now. We can see the logs once it completes. Okay, it has failed. Unhandled exception, Apprite exception. Okay, we might need to handle error in order to get better sense. Okay, we are having Apprite exception. Let's see. First, this one, I need to catch error on error. If error is Apprite exception, I'll just print error dot message and throw error, else print error and throw error. Here again, I could do try catch error, and I could check if error is Apprite exception, print message. Otherwise, I'll just rethrow Okay, looks good. Let's create a tar file again and then go to our console, and for functions, email notification, again deploy a tag, manual, send email dot main dot dart, activate, execute now, execute. Let's wait for the logs. So these kind of errors happen often. So during learning, it happens more often. And even when you are professional developer for many years, these kind of errors arise. And errors are the things that we learn from. So, okay, missing or unknown project ID. Did I spell it correct? Appright functions project ID. Okay, this is Appright function project ID, not functions project ID. Let's just create another tar file. Go here, overview, deploy, manual, again, main.dart, upload, activate, and finally execute, log. Let's wait for it to complete. Okay, it is green. Let's see the output. Total 0, email sent, email sent, email sent. One of the email here is my personal email. So let us check my personal email. And sure enough, I received the reminder. So this is how we get the email message. So we are now certain that it's working. Now finally, we can go to our functions settings and schedule it to run in a particular schedule. For example, we could schedule it to run 10 a.m. every day. For now, I'll just schedule it for 2 minutes. So I'll just use cron tab guru 5, right? Every 5th minute 2. So every 2nd minute, I could use this cron tab syntax to schedule this function every 2 minutes. If I update now, we need to wait for 2 minutes. So let me wait for 2 minutes and I'll get back. So we have 3 executions. Let me wait and get back to you when new execution is created. Okay, it's been few minutes and first execution has completed. Again, we can see the output logs and I know what we missed. So we needed to get the intake for a particular user, but in the filters, we only copied it from our application. So we don't have the filter for our user ID. So let's add it. Equals user ID. Now this should fix. Let's create tar file. Go to our function, overview tab, deploy tag, manual, choose, and create. Activate. Now we should wait for the schedule trigger, or we could execute now as well. And let's see the output of this HTTP trigger. Output, see, one of them has total 3. So email is not sent. We see now that our function is actually working. So this is the complete functions code that will be available in the GitHub, and repository link will be provided in the Discord. In these 3 episodes, we looked at what Appright Cloud Function is, how we can use it for our benefit to execute any custom code using any one of the supported runtime environments. And we used Cloud Function to get a notification in our Discord whenever new users signed up in our application. Then today, we used Cloud Function to notify our users if they have not drank any water, just reminding them to drink water by sending email. This is all for today's episode. Thank you everyone. See you again in the next episode.